I got a bone to pick with some like draft heads and some talent evaluators, because I understand that, you know, it could be a hard habit to break, or it can feel kind of comfortable or natural, or it could be kind of hard to avoid the bias there. But I want to be very clear. Just because a tight end is white and on the bigger side does not automatically mean that he merits comparison to Rob Gronkowski. Can we stop that stuff, please? Like, Gronk is arguably the first or second best tight end of my lifetime. First or second, perhaps, best tight end in NFL history. Not every, 6'5", 250-pound plus guy that's kind of slower of foot is Rob Gronkowski. Stop that. Do better. Because for Michael Mayer, I saw a couple of random comparisons online, and I did see people, I don't know why, comparing him to Gronkowski. And I don't know where the fuck this comes from. I don't even mean this as a shot towards Michael Mayer. I'm just saying, for crying out loud, I really don't see the comparison. He feels more like the standard Notre Dame tight end you've seen come into the league over the years than he does a freaking Gronk. But yeah, now we're talking about Michael Mayer. Now that I got off my soapbox there for a moment. I struggle with this one because he's been talked about for a while. I think at least for a year is probably the best all-around tight end prospect in this year's draft. And maybe if you're thinking truly from the pure, all-around standpoint, maybe you think he is. I don't think he is. But maybe you think he is. I get it. But maybe sometimes it's a little hard because you can get too caught up in certain traits or characteristics for guys. And maybe when it comes to the tight end position, sometimes I overvalue the importance of quickness and speed and athleticism. And that to be totally fair, that absolutely could be. But it's really hard for me to get really big on a guy like Mayer when he really lacks in those kind of key categories, right? Let me talk a little bit about him as a prospect and why I think he's a good prospect, but I don't exactly think he's a great one. He does do well to hold his blocks initially in the running game, so I do like that. However, he needs to be more consistent in sustaining his blocks. His initial pop, his initial connect is good. He lands a good initial blow, but the maintenance, the sustaining, that is a challenge for him. He's going to have to get better at it. He's got a really good feel as a route runner for finding the right hole in the zone, the right spot to kind of sit there. He's also, when you're talking about the tight end position, you want guys that can use their body well, that can go high point the ball. He certainly can. At a bare minimum, if a Michael Mayer doesn't have 5 or 6 touchdown catches in the season just because you went to him in the red zone, you're probably a really dumb, bad coach. More than Michael Mayer just didn't do well. How could you look at this big motherfucker and not say to yourself, hey, once or twice a game, we're going to throw it to him in the end zone and see what happens. Feels like if you don't, then you're just not doing it right. Really does a good job of using his strength, his physicality to wall off defenders. To me, he plays bigger than his size at times, especially as a route runner. He does a good job of using his body, using it to create space when the defender has him blanketed. Now, I could sit there and say, part of the reason that he gets blanketed is because of that below average play speed. He's kind of a little heavy-footed, slow-footed, but when he is covered, he can create a little bit of a seam there. He can get a little bit of a separation. He can also be a very physical runner in the open field. Now, obviously, he's not really going to make anybody miss in the open field. That's not going to happen. But he can be a load to bring down in the open field. Now, for old school Notre Dame fans, they're going to be like, yeah, like Mark Bavaro. No, I'm not going that fucking far. Yeah, like Gronkowski. I wouldn't even quite go that far. Because Gronk was a little more dynamic, right? And I think a little more physical as a runner after the catch than Mayer is. And Bavaro, there aren't too many from the tight end position you can compare to Bavaro in terms of his sheer physicality as a tight end, and especially in terms of run after the catch. But, I look at him, and things that concern me about Michael Mayer, like he's got okay size, but he's certainly not, massive or anything. He's more average than anything else in terms of his size. He's slow-footed. He takes a while to get up to speed. His overall play speed is below average. And I know I sat there and talked about like he can be a physical runner after the catch. Let me provide some clarity. He can be really hard to bring down. At the same time, he's also not as powerful of an open field runner consistently as you would think or you would like him to be, which is going to be important for a guy that's not really going to run by a bunch of people and he's not going to make many people miss. I also think his route tree is a little bit limited because of his lack of foot speed and athleticism. Now, in terms of NFL comparisons, I'm sitting there saying all this about, stop comparing every, slow-footed white guy to freaking Rob Gronkowski, but yet I'm going to sit here and do something similar by comparing him to another former Notre Dame tight end, Kyle Rudolph. But I think, there is a logic there. You're going to say, well, you did a similar thing with Cole Kmet, didn't you? Yeah, I did. And there's a bit of a similarity there, right? Like, Notre Dame has a type. Like you say for me, like, I have a type when it comes to women. I absolutely do. And they're not white, right? Like, it's just, you have a type, you have a type. Right? Yeah. Well, in this case, Notre Dame certainly has a type when it comes to their tight ends and guys that they feature in that role and guys that they ultimately send to the NFL. The Rudolphs of the world, the Cole Kmets of the world, the John Carlsons of the world, etc. Michael Mayer is also in that mix. A lot of similarities there in those guys. I think Mayer is a good tight end prospect. I think he's a NFL starter. Is he an average NFL starter or above average NFL starter or a great NFL starter? I'm a little less confident in the higher end of that. I think at a minimum, he's kind of a middle-of-the-road NFL starter, which to me makes him probably a second-round talent and, maybe the third or fourth best tight end on the board. Good prospect, like I said, but I would feel some heartburn around taking him in round one because you could say, well, his floor is kind of high. Yeah, that's true. But I think his ceiling is relatively low compared to some of the other guys in this class.